Say Guru, everyone.
Sure.
Welcome to minute 36 of the podcast Awake Minute by Minute. How are you doing, Mike?
Very well. I'm getting ready for Christmas, getting in the Christmas mood. How about you?
Of course, this will be posted a few weeks after Christmas, so let's hope everyone had a good Christmas.
Yeah.
Chris?
Struggling through January. Yeah, all good. Happy here. I was showing you guys my citronella for my mosquitoes, and bang, that's top advice for anybody in tropical countries. So I'm mosquito free. Feeling good, ready for the podcast.
Great. I'm doing pretty well. Just came back from the gym. Pretty pretty weak actually.
Where's your beach ball?
Hey, Mike, coming back to your Christmas comment, now you've given away the secret. Everyone knows now how far in advance we record these episodes.
Well, we've given clues before, so it's not that.
True. Okay, so minute 36, what is it about? It is mainly about Amelita Gallicucci. Is that how you say it, Mike? How do you say it? Your Italian's pretty good.
Gallicurci.
Gallicurci. Galli is Galli.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Gallicurci. And so what we have pretty much Guruji and Amelita walking into the set, and then they're meditating and enjoying some fellowship together. We have a lovely picture of Amelita and one of her records, which is Prima Voce, is that right? And we have Dhirananda talking. In between that, we also have like a telegram which requests the urgent help for Swami Dhirananda in LA. And then we have Dhirananda talking about why Guruji would need that help, I suppose. So let's get straight into it. Amelita Gallicurci. They have a cool walk. They walk together. They have some nice fellowship. There's a really nice rapport between them, isn't there? And they get into the meditation posture. And then interestingly, you think it's a continuation, but in the next scene they switch positions. So they must have recorded this more than once, even though they're wearing the same clothes. Amelita is when they're meditating, Yogananda is stoically sat and back straight, doing the classical meditation posture, eyes gazed upwards. And Yogananda Guruji obviously often meditates with his eyes half open and gazing upwards, looking quite fearsome. That posture always, that eye always is a bit scary for me, because I see loads of people at the center doing it as well. Looks a bit scary. I don't know, do you guys meditate that way, half eyes, half closed?
I sometimes do, because you lose it. It is the easiest way to be sure that your gaze are fixed on the spiritual eye. And sometimes when I do it, I feel like I need confirmation, and then I leave the eyes half open for a bit. But I don't do it the whole time usually.
I think it depends. Yeah, it depends where you are. Seeing other people in that phase can be quite intriguing, because it's not something you see every day, right? And I think Yogananda talks about trying to meditate in public spaces. Don't bother doing certain aspects of the posture, because you're going to draw onto attention to yourself. And I imagine this is one of the things that he's possibly referring to in some of the texts. But I don't know. For me, sometimes I'm more relaxed and my eyes naturally kind of come open a little bit. Other times, I keep my eyes closed. But I was told, not to worry too much about exactly where the eyes are, as long as they're relaxed and you're not tensing. I think early days when you start meditating, I experienced this. I was almost too affixed with the idea, I had to really was I looking high enough, and where was I meant to be looking, and the attention was really taken away from the purpose of the meditation. So yeah, a natural gaze between the eyebrows, not tensing too much, is is the technique in general. I should add, in case anybody's listening that doesn't really know too much about it. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, just the goal is to look slightly upwards. I think imagining like something that you'd look at maybe like 10-15 centimeters away from your forehead. But some people also misquote the Bhagavad Gita. It says that you should meditate with your eyes focused at the tip of the nose, and then people think that it's this tip of the nose, which is at the top of the bottom of your nose where your nostrils are. Then you're obviously doing the complete opposite, which is looking downwards and kind of cross-eyed. It feels crazy. You try it, you feel crazy. And there's people that actually ascribe to this method, but Yogananda clarifies this and says, no, the tip of the nose that is meant is the upward joining of the nose, the upward bit where the tip would be. So there's 2 tips, maybe.
Maybe we should say is the why we look there. Why do you look between the eyebrows, Priyank?
No, Chris, you answer your own question.
I was hoping I would get a better one from you, Priyank. So as far as what I'm aware, with SRF teachings, you're looking at the point between the eyebrows being the third eye, the pineal gland, and that in part that activates a energetic passage between your pineal gland and the medulla oblongata. So it runs parallel. And when you look up, you're then able to say open the flow of the prana of life energy through the medulla easier. So you're able to channel that energy more. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
Not my take, that's what I understand.
Yeah, so it's also described as the center of concentration and willpower. So you're kind of really focusing your attention in that practice. And it's one of the chakra that it's described to is the Kutashta Chaitanya. And the polar opposite of that is the Agna chakra, which is at the back of the neck, or the medulla oblongata, which you just said. So the pineal gland is actually at the back of your head. So those 2 chakras are like the polar opposite. So they're kind of connected. So one is like a receiver, the Kutashta is a receiver, and then it comes to the energy comes to the back, which is the Agna chakra, which you see very nice pictures and descriptions of in various. There's a very nice picture of it actually in the God Talks with Arjuna section of the Bhagavad Gita. The introduction section actually.
You're correct. I think you slightly misspoke when you said the pineal gland's at the back of the head.
Yeah, is that not right?
It's at the front, isn't it? The medulla is the back.
No, but the base it's not. I don't know. Mike, what do you think?
Mike, chime in. I'm googling.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure.
Is it? Yeah, go on. It could be at the back of the throat, because I remember sweetness supposed to there's supposed to be some sweetness that drops into it if you connect to it or something like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. It's 2/3 of the way the back, of the brain.
That's right. Yeah. So it's definitely it's more closer to the medulla than or the Agna chakra, as you would describe it. So
this is like the eye of Horus as well. I'm googling and Google's telling me all sorts of stuff here.
I don't know what is the eye of Horus. I don't know what that is.
The symbol, the eye, the all-seeing eye in the Egyptian.
In the middle of the pyramids and things like that.
That's on the dollar bills, right?
Oh yes.
No, that's something different. That's same sort of thing, I think. But then I mean the eye of Horus with the kind of eyebrow and the eye with the little flick. It's got the little. I need to share my screen to be able to describe it, but it's essentially the outline of what the pineal gland looks like. And so they say that ancient Egypt might have known about the pineal gland and all sorts of stuff. But this is a segue.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And then we see, as I say, Amelita is actually not doing the correct meditation posture. She's kind of, her chin isn't parallel to the ground, it's slightly further down, and she's kind of feels like her gaze is downward, and she's got her hands kind of folded into each other, and she's got her she's got them on her knees. She's kind of knelt down, sitting down with her hands on her knees. What is your, Chris, what is your favorite, actually ask Mike, what is your favorite position to meditate in, or surface?
Surface? I like meditating out in nature, but it's usually doesn't make for very long meditations for me. Either it's super windy, or it's cold, or it's hot, or I don't know. It's like my favorite surface is on a carpet at home and a cushion. That's my favorite.
What about for long meditations?
Yeah, for long meditations, I can do the carpet thing for like an hour, hour and a half, and then I start switching positions. Yeah, at some point it will be on a chair or something similar.
Chris?
Proper Westerner, yeah. I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I quite like the edge of my bed, the bottom of my bed. I don't know whether it's I'm lazy by nature and I just want the closest thing to when I wake up sometimes, just to throw a couple pillows at the bottom of the bed.
Chris has got a hammock in the back. So are you talking about your bed as your hammock? I mean, can you meditate in your hammock?
Not quite. I don't know. I'm not quite sure Yukteswar's level. I think if I was lying on my back meditating, I would soon fall asleep. Whereas he kind of famously in the autobiography of a yogi was able to go full samadhi when Yogananda was sitting next to him and wasn't breathing, so on. It was quite shocking to Yogananda. But for me, try to go. I can't do a full lotus, but I can do a half lotus, and that took me a long time, I should say. Again, for anyone listening, like I had terrible tightness of lower back and everything when I started meditating, but I sat and breathed through doing the asanas as well, but tried to go into semi-lotus for hours and hours on end and just breathe through it, and eventually your muscles relax and you can do it. So if you can't do it, of course you can in time, by and large, I would say most people can. So yeah, semi-lotus and probably the bottom of my bed with some nice comfy pillow, because I find sometimes the knees can hurt and so on and so forth if you're there for too long. So yeah, I like my comforts. Very
nice. Let's talk a little bit about Amelita now. She's an operatic soprano.
What about yourself, Brett?
I didn't answer. I knew I was missing something.
You've got some cool pictures of you meditating on top of like mountains and things.
Yes, that's just for show, really. Well, I usually try and get into the full lotus. I do get into it, but it's extremely uncomfortable for me. But I like to just take a picture, and I'm trying to do a new hashtag where everyone joins in. It's called hashtag Padmasana, which is the full lotus. And then so like I'm hoping like this becomes a craze where people aren't just taking selfies, they're actually going into a really cool meditation position and taking selfies. So I've taken a few. I started it when I was, I think, 18, as my Instagram picture is one of me when I was very young doing it. So I've tried to, it's been 20 years now, I'm keeping it going. So my favorite is on the floor, with a slightly raised cushion for the bottom of my spine. But just like Mike, after an hour, 90 minutes, my leg feels like it's going to eat me alive. So then I have to massage it. And actually, no, I can go on, but the left leg is so dead that like there's no movement, it's just completely cold. And then so I do sometimes go on, but then getting out of that meditation, getting up is just like the most painful. Your leg is jelly. No, I can't even get up. If I tried to get up, my leg would collapse. That's how dead it goes. So obviously my body is not yet ready to do any long period of meditation in that, sitting on the floor. But I do feel the best meditation. So every evening I meditate on the floor, because I do a lower time duration of meditation. But in the morning when I have a longer meditation every day, I'm always on a chair.
Not that we're on the subject, not to drag it out, but in Northern Ireland, they don't get the sun, but here in Brazil, you do. And I just wondered if there's real benefits of trying to meditate in early morning sun, late evening sun, bare chest, because I know Yogananda talks about the benefits of getting sun exposure on your skin, on your body, in the back and stomach, and whether the combination of the two actually, maybe some of the viewers have experienced with it, maybe you guys. For myself,
makes for good Instagram pictures.
Yeah.
No, I agree, Chris. We should try, but the climate has to be pretty perfect. As Mike says, meditating in nature is fraught with difficulties for us laymen who can't ignore, mosquitoes and cold weather and everything else that comes with it. Yeah, comes with meditating outside. So I totally agree. It's quite nice, and even just meditating with your ears open, like I sometimes meditate in the forest, and then the forest noises are just so, they capture your mind, and you can just meditate just listening, and that's a really lovely experience, and it's a technique unto itself.
Yeah, I agree. Meditating by the beach is really nice. You hear the waves coming in, because it's like a periodic sound, so you can like focus on it for a while. It's very good.
The ocean isn't in the right ear. cheating, Mike, you're cheating.
Yeah. I want to hear the waves.
Right, so let's talk about Amelita. So she's a world-renowned operatic soprano. So soprano means that she basically can do 2 octaves beautifully well on the piano. So you can imagine C and then next C and then next C. So that's two whole octaves, which is quite a vocal range. So you need to be able to do that to be a world-renowned operatic soprano. You guys, what are your thoughts on Amelita, of what you know of her? Anyone?
I would give a comment in general, but whenever I hear her voice, and maybe you might want to get to this, so I'll not go into like reactions or anything, but I just think it's like angelic, isn't it? And I think about the throat chakra and how clear maybe is the right description that it must be, for her. I would suggest that, for me, I'm probably more blocked in that area than anything else. So I kind of envy the beauty that she can, expose through the voice and through this chakra. But yeah, and until I really saw this documentary, I hadn't heard of her, but certainly her voice is amazing.
Yeah, she has a very, very beautiful voice, and she's also a very famous celebrity at the time, right? And that also plays a role because she uses her fame to help Guruji promote his teachings, and that's probably one of the reasons why she is so prominently in so many pictures. And I mean, sopranos, even today, I mean, this is like a thing, you need a very, very advanced kind of voice. Like you said, Priyank, you need to be able to be on 2 octaves, and it's like very high and it's very nice. Like I always think of Julie Andrews as a soprano, right? Because she's like a lot of the songs that I heard as a kid, they were like from her, and it's very nice singing.
Yes. She's also written a foreword for Whispers of Eternity. So no doubt she was a very devoted. I encourage you to listen to that or read that foreword, because Whispers of Eternity is a book that has kind of inspirational bits and quotes and like passages and about subjects that are very diverse, and it's quite a long book, but you can meditate on each, as with a lot of Yogananda's work. You can meditate on each passage, and it's quite beautiful. Mike, what do you think of Whispers from Eternity?
It's one of those like a lot of Guruji's books, he like either it is like from his talks or something, but Whispers from Eternity is more like the poems he wrote, and it's about devotion, right? It is like how to increase your devotion, And if you feel like you need a thought for the day, or you need to get some inspiration, then you read it, and it's like definitely focusing on your heart chakra rather than on your intellect. And I feel like her, with her beautiful voice and her way of conducting herself, is like the perfect person to write like a foreword for it.
Yes, Chris, have you got that forward? Do you want to read it, or shall I read it?
Yes, you read it, I think.
Okay, so I'll just read the last paragraph of it. It says, "Pass not by with hurried intellectual reading the precious mines of truth hidden in the soil of words in this sacred book. Instead, dig deep in the mines with a pickaxe of attentive, reverent, and meditative study, and finally find the priceless gem of self-realization." What a beautiful way to describe or encourage someone to read a book.
Yeah, the kind of genius of Yogananda, I think he was described as a spiritual genius by the names escaping me in the early part of the documentary.
Deepak Chopra.
Deepak Chopra. I think it's apt, isn't it? You know, he was able to tap into that realm of kind of all-knowing and expression. And you know, the Whispers from Eternity book is a beautifully poetic way to describe and inspire the readers for spiritual aspiration. So there's, you know, he can transport the reader to such a place with so few words that it's quite amazing, isn't it? You can really feel instantly exactly what he's trying to describe. So he is an absolute genius in that sense. I feel, for somebody who came from, you know, India, picked up the language as he did, you know, it's just beautiful what he can do.
Yeah, and it's so, I feel like Whispers from Eternity is so universal. Like, you don't really think of it as being from a certain religion or being like steering you in a certain direction. It is just you and God, right? And I feel like when you see a lot of those inspirational quotes on Instagram or on Facebook, oftentimes you get people like Rumi, for example, who is also very universal. You don't say, oh yeah, Rumi was from this religion or that, or from this country or that. It's just something that applies to everybody. And I feel like Whispers from Eternity is a bit like that. It's like very much about your connection to your soul and to God.
Yes. So, and at this point, Amelita, we actually hear a snippet of her singing an opera. And the opera that she's singing is a very famous one. It's called Aida by Giuseppe Verdi. And Aida, is it? Okay. So I don't know, have you seen this opera, Mike? You probably haven't.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I grew up in Vienna, so
I know
the opera a lot. Yeah.
When I went to see Mike in Vienna, I said, "We've got to go see an opera." He's like, "Yeah, I suppose we do." And we looked it up. And we looked it up, and there was nothing good showing at the time, so we don't. And
like a thing, every time somebody comes to Vienna, there's always, oh yeah, let's go to the opera. It's like, oh God.
And Mike, Chris, what do you think of opera, Chris?
I've only ever been to one in my time in London. I couldn't tell you what it was.
Was it called Carmen?
No.
Phantom of the Opera?
No, it wasn't Phantom. No. I do want to see that though.
Don't bother. Anyway, carry on.
It's an acquired taste, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, you've really got to appreciate some of the things that are happening on stage, and you know, for me, it was the one show that I saw was good, but it wasn't enticing me to say I have to go again. I have to go back because I loved it that much. I've seen a few ballet shows, and I know people describe it in similar ways, like it's acquired taste. But luckily, I've got a fiance who's a ex-ballerina, so she tells me exactly why it's difficult and exactly. So I appreciate it more.
Interesting. Let's ask our friend, Mr. Morgan Freeman, how he would describe.
have no idea to this day what those two Italian ladies were singing about. Truth is, I don't want to know. Some things are best left unsaid. I like to think they were singing about something so beautiful it can't be expressed in words, and makes your heart ache because of it. I tell you, those voices soared, higher and farther than anybody in a great place dares to dream. It was like some beautiful bird flapped into our drab little cage and made those walls dissolve away. And for the briefest of moments, every last man at Shawshank felt free.
I love that film.
That is, it's a very poetic sequence that's from the film. And I think his words ring very true, because with art, you don't need to understand. I always get fixated with what things mean, what's the translation, the music, which instruments are playing, etc., rather than focusing, or not focus, rather than letting the music and the feeling kind of just make you transcend that little space that you're in and just take you to another mystical dimension. I think Morgan Freeman really described it beautifully there, didn't he? He doesn't care what those Italian ladies were singing.
Yeah, it's exactly the point, and it's really interesting, actually. A good example of what opera can do, and I think the word there you used was free. Like, everybody felt free, like they were free. But free from what? Free from the confinements of the walls of the prison. But then you could have that in a mental sense, an emotional sense, not just the physical. And so it's an amazing thing that can transform the person's being. Which, going to what I was kind of going to say earlier on, when I first heard Amelita's voice, it kind of shocked me a little bit, because we don't really hear that in modern music, right? We don't hear this these tones so much, and it really makes you sit up and pay attention. So there's definitely something in there that's really hitting some notes within your soul. That's he and Morgan Freeman's voice himself is for him to be saying these things just makes it all the more sweeter.
Of course, that film was Shawshank Redemption. Mike, you've seen it, obviously.
Yeah, and in that scene, also what is striking when you watch the movie, especially, is because they are in this prison for basically the whole movie, right? So you see how there's a lot of things that are not very nice. There's a lot of things that are depressing in there, and the contrast of playing this music in this prison is like one of the things that make that scene so striking. And because this music is beautiful, like it's very pleasing to the ear, and it's like a complete opposite of what they experience in this prison usually. Yes.
So the opera that Amelita is singing in this world is from in that section of the film Awake, is as we said, it's Aida, and it's actually the last sequence of the film, which is the opera, and it's entitled "O terra, addio." Mike, what does that mean, if I've pronounced it correctly? No, he doesn't know. Apparently it means goodbye, terrible world, or in goodbye, cruel world. And the opera is I encourage you to you read the synopsis or the plot of the opera. It's quite beautiful. It's set in some ancient time in Egypt, and it's about an Egyptian general and an Egyptian king. They take over this Ethiopian kingdom, and they take loads of slaves. And unbeknownst to the general, or no, the king, unbeknownst to the king, one of the ladies that he took was the princess of Ethiopia, but she wanted to remain hidden because she didn't want to reveal her true identity. And in midst all this, the general fell in love with this princess, because he knew, when he was obviously capturing that Ethiopian land, and he knew, so he fell in love with her. And the king wanted the general to marry his daughter, his princess, and then but that didn't obviously go down, because he's in love with this other lady. And then it all transpires, and finally it all comes out that this thing has happened, and it's kind of like traitorism, because he's fallen in love with the enemy and he's given away secrets to the other side. So he's sentenced to like a burial by death, and she runs away back to her kingdom. So then on the day that he goes, enters the tomb where he's going to stay for, starve to death, he finds Aida there. And she says, I can't live without you, and I'm gonna die here with you as well. And that is where this song is, oh terra, addio. And it just shows, they're just saying it's been a cruel life and a cruel world, and it's quite a nice opera. I'll put a link to it. You can watch, if anyone who's into it, you can watch the whole thing, a different version that's on YouTube. So that's the opera. Any thoughts?
Just getting flashbacks to the opera I saw. I still can't remember what it was, but I think I was probably more distracted by what was actually happening on stage than listening to the music and the voice. But no, just any of the listeners, if there are any inspirational operas going on that they enjoy from a spiritual point of view, let us know.
Spiritual opera, that would be a thing.
It would, yeah.
Interesting. I just watched. I just went to see Satyagraha, the opera, which is about Gandhi's plight in India, by the composer Philip Glass, who's quite famous. And interestingly, he's I don't know if I told you about this. He actually plays some of his music is in Awake. He composed some of the music for that as well. So it's funny how things tie up together. But yeah, that was a good opera as well. Anyway, going to the next scene of the film, we have pictures of Guruji standing outside Mother Center. 2 pictures, very nice pictures. On a sunny day, one he's kind of with his briefcase in a suit, and another he's with his ochre robe. He's kind of just looking at the camera from a distance. Quite nice little pictures there. And then we have a Western Union telegram. Telegram. This is obviously something that most of our listeners will know nothing of, other than the app that is Telegram, obviously. Mike, can you tell us anything about Telegram, the technology?
Yeah, it was before they had the Transcontinental Railroad. They didn't even have and before they had the Transcontinental Telegram service, I think it took like 5 days for news to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast.
You could be getting invaded by England and you wouldn't know for 5 days.
Exactly, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that played a role in wars. It also played a role in elections, because they still had countrywide elections in times before the telegraphs, and people, they didn't know the results for weeks until they actually were brought there by the famous like mail carriage or whatever, brought it, and then once they
by the birds.
By the birds, yeah, that was
carrier pigeon, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they went coast to coast, or if they made it over. And then telegram itself is a very simple technology, right? It's like Morse code through electric wires, and so on one side you send out a signal, on the other side to receive it. Somebody writes it down.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come in such a short amount of time. The yugas, what? Don't mention the yugas. Yeah.
Interestingly, the technology hasn't actually changed that much. If you look at the when we send data across in packets and stuff, it is literally just ones and zeros, but compressed more and more and more.
We just found more efficient encodings than Morse code.
Exactly, right.
And we found how to send more than one signal through one wire.
Yeah, yep. And it's not some guy on the other end like translating. We've come up with a method to translate what each sequence means, etc. So it's it hasn't changed that much. It's just a variation of the old, really. Obviously much better way of doing things, but not that much innovation.
True, actually, true. And
because you'd think, for example, looking at Telegram then and our phones and data now, you'd think it must be some crazy new stuff, but actually if you go down to principles is the same, ones and zeros, noise or no noise.
Well, we did come up with satellites, and we would be able to do it via satellite, but cables are just cheaper. So we even put cables under the oceans, right? Like I think the US and Europe and I think all the countries by now are connected through undersea cables.
Interestingly, my brother-in-law works at an investment bank, and he, they call the exchange rate between dollars to sterling, British pounds. They don't call it dollar pound; they call it cable, and that is because of the cable that's laid in between the two countries.
That's funny.
Anyway,
the technology of the future, I'm sure, will look more like magic to us, right? Just as
that's what we always say. We always have those expectations in the future, and then when I was young, I thought by the time I retired, there would be everything, flying cars and flying everything, and everything will be super advanced. And then it's barely changed, in my opinion.
I don't know. Like if you took a cell phone 100 years ago, it would be pretty spectacular, wouldn't it? You'd show videos and the sounds and everything coming out of it. It would be pretty spectacular. So in 100 years time, what is it going to be? It's probably going to be all augmented reality and virtual reality sense, and that's that's another world. We were talking about,
and you're talking like someone in the 40s who like read the book 1984 and they're like, oh yeah, they're going to be so advanced.
True. I think what is it? It was Buddha said after like realization, or before realization you are doing the dishes, and after realization you do the dishes. And just some things that don't change, I guess. And Guruji talks a lot about simplifying your life. Don't overcomplicate it with unnecessary things, and technology might come under that bracket, but this more subtle abilities of technology like artificial intelligence and how that will infuse with our everyday lives will make living quite different, I'm sure, with the Internet of Things mixed with that. But yeah, I mean, I hope we go back to more natural ways of living for sure, and maybe that's seen as some people to take a step back, but actually, from a yogic sense, it's taking a step forward, isn't it, in many senses?
Yes. And what did the telegram say? The telegram said, from Swami Yogananda, Los Angeles, to Swami Dhirananda, Boston, our existence here depends on the success of Los Angeles. You are needed. So in my mind, what he means by that is that there's two things. One, which what we're going to get to, what the Amelita says about him, doing various tours and all that kind of stuff around the US to further spread the message. But secondly, the Mother Center itself was a work in progress. That was a colossal project. The building was in quite a state when they got it, and finances were tough. They had, I think we mentioned previously, they had paying guests. They had various ways to try and raise money. They even had their own printer to publish material and all that kind of stuff. What other troubles, guys, do you think that Yogananda would have gone through in those early days that would have inspired him to call Swami Dhirananda? And of course, you'll remember Swami Dhirananda is his childhood friend from India, whom he called to Boston just a couple of years before this. So he was managing things in Boston. But yeah, Mike, what do you think are the struggles, or what are the struggles that he would have inspired this decision to call Swami Dhirananda over?
I think one of the things that Guruji was doing a lot these days was holding lectures, and he was on the road a lot. And so he needed someone to cover the home base and to have regular, for people who live close, who want to be part of it in LA, who would give services, who would, I'm not sure if there was an ashram already there, but if there was, who kind of organizes the ashram. And Guruji wasn't able to do everything at once. Like he wasn't the saint with two bodies, right? Who could just give a lecture and at the same time be at Mother Center. So I feel like just out of that necessity, and he worked with Dhirananda before, right, in the Ranchi school, and as you said, he was in Boston before running his operation there. And now, since the pivot kind of moved from Boston to LA, he kind of moved Dhirananda with that, I guess.
Yes, very much so. Chris, what do you think?
I think that, as we've talked about in previous minutes, Yogananda did learn to value the skill and necessity of organization, and he, would have needed additional help with that as the organization of SRF and YSS grew. So he would have wanted somebody who he would trust, and he would give a lot of responsibility and hand the reins over in some ways. And he would need somebody who he knows, because it's a very critical time. We look back now, and my impression of SRF is it's this great organization that's got fantastic foundations and is rock solid. But this was in the early stages, so it would have been more risky, and I'm sure he would have really thought carefully with who he entrusted to take on that role, and who better than the person who I think his family helped provide for Yogananda in younger life in some ways, right? Give him some refuge and shelter and food.
Yeah.
So he would have had strong ties there comically and so forth.
Yes, indeed. Talking about planning, all his road trips. Mike, I've just put a card on there labeled to you. Do you want to read that out?
Sure. Arranging and managing a multi-city lecture is challenging even today, with our ability to connect with anyone, anytime, from just about anywhere. Imagine what it must have entailed in an era of coin-operated phone booth, long-distance operators, telegrams, and letter writing, especially in the service of a dynamo who needed very little sleep and seemed to be willing to speak anywhere he could. Lining up venues, arranging dates, negotiating finances, placing ads in newspapers, designing and posting flyers and billboards, it all must have required a traveling team, an organized group of locals, and coordination from the Mother Center. Yeah,
so quite a challenge. And remember I mentioned Mr. Rashid, he was also helping him at this time. Mr. Rashid was one of his friends, I would say, that was on the boat with him on the way to India.
Friends, right? At some point, a lot of them, as the organization grew, they kind of, maybe they saw dollar signs in their eyes or something, or their egos became too big, and then they kind of started suing him.
Yes. We're going to come to that a bit later, I think. Yeah. But that certainly were legal challenges, shall we say. In respect to what he actually did whilst on tour, Chris, I've just put a card on there labeled your name. That was so he even went all the way back to New York, Carnegie Hall. Chris, do you want to read that out for me, this section?
Sure. And so he asked the capacity crowd to join him in song. He wisely chose not to go with Sanskrit mantras, but rather with his English translation of I'll butcher this word, but Bhajan, yes. Bhajan, composed by Guru Nanak, the 15th century founder of the Sikh faith. The song, which remains a beloved liturgical, sorry, this is my dyslexic again, I don't know, liturgical feature in organizations propagating Yogananda's work, is called "Oh God, Beautiful." Hey Hari Sundara. The lyrics are as follows. Shall I read it out?
Do you know how to sing that one?
I do, but I won't. for the benefit of all listeners.
Oh God, beautiful. Oh God, beautiful.
God, beautiful.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And then, you want to read the next bit as well?
Okay, yeah, I'll skip that bit. It went on for an hour and 25 minutes, round after round, the same verses. The Carnegie congregation must have been astonished. We don't know how many fidgeted or if any walked out, but the open-minded and spiritually receptive would have discovered unfamiliar feelings of ecstasy and perhaps transcendence.
Keep going.
Continue, yeah. The thousands of voices of the entire audience chanted a divine atmosphere of the joyous praise Yogananda said about the evening.
Yeah.
Sacred music became a standard, etc., etc.
Yes, yes. So you certainly did a lot of cool things to different people and different audiences. Do you think that would work today, guys? You know, we're having a monk's visit in London. Hopefully, later in 2022. Do you think it would work if rather than a lecture usually given for like 40 minutes and a meditation, if they just did 1.5 hours of "Oh God, beautiful"? How do you think that would go down to the non-devotees? Obviously, to the devotees.
It would draw some people. I think it would. I mean, it is always a different thing if Guruji does it himself.
Yeah.
So he was definitely a magnet for people. But I do think this is something that has an appeal. It's a very beautiful song. It's very beautiful lyrics, and I feel like it helps you interiorize when you sing it. So I'd go for it.
Take one hell of a singer, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think Yogananda did say, like, don't worry about being a singer or not, right? And I know I'm going against his good words of wisdom and advice by refusing to sing it. But you know, he says that, you know, you should charge your voice with devotion, right? And that's what you should put. Don't worry about being a rubbish singer, which, let's be honest, 90% of us probably are. You know, if we're not certainly the professional singers of the world. Often I find, you know, or found in the London Centre, that the chants didn't go on long enough. I always wanted them to go on longer, because I was either not just getting into it, but I was really feeling the vibrations of the room come alive, and it really helps, doesn't it? And I don't know, maybe it would be advisable to try to have one of these longer sessions from time to time. It would certainly be interesting, and I, for one, would welcome it as well.
Yes, I always feel conscious that I'm chanting for too long when I'm chanting at the center. I always like cut it short, but I'll bear that in mind, Chris, next time.
No, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what people think, but you know, I think in general, you know, it's good not to be too uptight or too rigid about these things, right? And you know, feel the moment. And Yogananda just clearly just felt, you know, gone with that moment. And 1 hour 25 minutes is, he's really went deep, which is what he teaches us to do, right? You know, don't do things superficially. Don't do things just for the sake of it. You have to really, you know, go deep into it.
Yeah. So. Says Chris, as there's some beautiful birds singing in the background of his
have the
Amazon
rainforest.
Yeah, amazing.
Between them and the roosters, yeah, there's plenty of birds.
Mike, how do you handle when you're chanting at the center? How do you like think, oh, I should do this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Yeah, I like chanting. So I really like the kirtans. I think they did them at first month on the Tuesday, right? So I like to go to those.
I'm talking about when you were leading them, Mike.
I mean, it's kind of a predefined schedule, so I can't really chant too long.
Mike, you just run away with it in 40 minutes in. People are like taking a microphone from you.
but then maybe later you get some feedback, and it's like,
yeah.
You're cut.
Okay.
You're cut. You're off the team.
You're out.
You can't follow simple instructions on time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tricky one.
And in other talks, Yogananda said he would, when speaking of mind control and Yogodo exercises, he might invite people to touch his bicep, which he would cause to vibrate with energy in the manner of an electric power machine, as Kamala Silva put it in The Flawless Mirror. He might have physicians come up on stage to verify that he could stop his breath and heartbeat at will and cause the pulses on each wrist to beat at different counts. On at least one occasion, he asked some beefy security guards to try and dislodge him from his position. They failed, of course. And in the coming years, we'll see he will be joined by many other theatrical personalities, but we should obviously consider this in the context of the showbiz world that was around at that time, and attracting people off the street, as it were, that may not be interested in spirituality. Because I think he used to draw these little hooks to get people involved, and then do a 1.5 hour chant of "Oh God, beautiful," and they're like, "Oh, well, where's that 1.5 hours gone?"
Yeah, I'm always surprised to hear these sort of stories. I have to be honest, that Yogananda would revert to using his powers in ways, in displays of mystical displays, I suppose. But at the same time, if the outcome is such that you're really planting the seeds for something, for what SRF is today, I'm certainly not one to question it. But he talks about in the autobiography of a yogi, the different saints, who can the saint that can produce scents, flower scents and things like that. And he refers to them as kind of sort of not wasting their time, but they're spending their energy in ways that could be better spent. So yeah, I think going back to a previous minute we did, with Los Angeles, like the seeker was definitely rife in Los Angeles. Maybe it was just the right amount for that right time. Yeah, who knows?
Here in LA, there is an area called Venice, and there's by the beach there's an area called Muscle Beach. And if you would walk up there and say, "Touch my biceps," I'm gonna charge it with energy that would fly there, I would say.
Spoken like a true Arnie, Mike.
Yeah, I mean those kind
Do
of
it.
things.
Touch my bicep now.
Exactly. That's how I imagine it. It must have been so funny. It must be so funny.
Now we know what you spend your days doing, but Mike.
Chris, you won't notice that Mike and I have got this running Arnie joke. We just try and invent captions that he would have, and then of course there's the like more Arnie-eyed version of Arnie in The Simpsons, which is McBain, like feel the pain. That guy. It's freaking awesome. Anyway, there's in the rest of the minute, we also have Dhirananda talking and just reflecting on what Mike mentioned about the difficulty managing the center whilst he went around the center and went around USA lecturing. And then we also have quite a nice picture, a video of Yogananda either greeting or meeting in it's like he either looks like a Muslim saint, fakir, or it could be a rabbi. Could be a rabbi. Could be a rabbi. Yeah. So basically, the point is that he used to He used to really do interreligion quite well, in the sense that he used to translate songs by Muslim people like Kabir and saints and mystics, and obviously translated the Rubaiyat by Khayyam, and he also did Guru Nanak, who just sung, we just read out the bit where he was translated the "Oh God, beautiful" from Guru Nanak's thing. So he would have met, I think this is what this is kind of referring to, this image that he played around, he toyed with interreligion and harmony and the universality of it all and things like that, which would have been unique in that time, actually. So he was probably most certainly a pioneer in that science of the church of all religions, not just the East or the West.
It's definitely rare. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the Baha'i are a bit of a similar, they have a similar idea that they don't say that we're like of all denominations. One thing I really liked when I looked into the Whispers from Eternity just now, I saw there's a dedication in the beginning. May I read that quickly? Because
Yeah,
it's
please.
very nice. It says, dedicated unto Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hebrews, Hindus, and all other religionists in whom the cosmic heart is ever throbbing equally, and onto the multicolored lamps of various true teachings in which shines the same white flame of God, and onto all churches, mosques, viharas, tabernacles, pagodas, and temples of the world, wherein the one Father dwells impartially in the fullness of his glory. I mean, come on. This is
Wow. Phenomenal.
You know when you have this thought of like Church of all religions, you think in the beginning, okay, this might be an idea, people might not be buying it, so you might not be super confident. And he's like so confident about this, right?
Once, I was looking
words, yeah.
Yeah, I was once locking up the center outside, Children's Street, and some guy walked past, as usually happens, and he said, "Oh, which denomination is this church? I'd like to visit one day." And I said, "No, it's not any particular denomination. It's actually a church of all religions." And he said, "Oh," and he gave me a puzzled look and carried on walking.
What a freak! Yeah.
Yeah. What does he think, we're in the Satya Yuga or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is probably the biggest thing we still have to overcome before we have like a united world. Is like Guruji says somewhere, before the world can unite, the religions have to unite, right? So I feel like there's still a lot of work to be done there.
Indeed.
Yeah, the easy way to categorize ourselves, isn't it? Like I think I told you the story about when I was growing up. I was asked if I was Protestant, no. Am I Catholic? No. Well, if you're not Protestant or Catholic, what are you? It's like we probably need to start redefining ourselves, something different than just these categories of religious contexts. But
yes.
We're souls.
We're souls, yes. What are you? Spirit soul.
Spirit souls.
How old are you? Infinite.
Yeah.
Or zero, whichever
zero
way
or
the
zero
quantum.
or one. Zero, everything's zero. Zeros and ones, isn't it?
All right, so that pretty much ends the minute. Next episode we will have Mike leading and talking a lot about Swami Dhirananda, his bit of his background and other things like that. Any other points anyone else would like to make about this minute?
No, maybe something on Amelita, just to expand that little story. She went to New Delhi in 1935 when she traveled with her second husband, I believe, who's a pianist. So they were traveling across India, and I think there's a little bit of controversy as to what exactly happened, whether or not it was her age or whether or not it was indeed what she said it was, which was she was having trouble with her voice, and she determined that there was a reduction of her airway of around 50%. So her trachea, and she had surgical treatment and thyroid surgery and things like this. But I think it looks like this is quite common when you get slightly older and you're a soprano, that you start to lose your upper vocal ranges and things like this. So yes, she went to India, and then she had this disaster, I suppose, from her vocal stance. So quite a strange twist, really, in that story. Traveling to India, it might have been in relation to some of the spiritual adventures that she was on, and then she hit into some kind of barriers along the way. So interesting story, interesting woman, really interesting person.
Indeed. Anything from you, Mike?
Yeah, and she lived in California afterwards, right? I wonder if that had to do with Guruji. And she basically she lived the rest of her life in San Diego. So
Sweet. Well, it's been a
Yeah,
pleasure,
very cool.
everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this minute. Thank you very much. Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Take care.